What's the worst thing you've done in the heat of the moment? My dad and I got into an argument when I was 6 years old, so I wrote my very specific, very rare first name across the side of his brand new car with a stone. When he asked me if I'd done it, I, of course, denied it profusely. I'm talking Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice level of acting. I should won a goddamned Oscar. So he sort of laughed and said, "You're telling me someone else came up to my car and scratched your name across it?" I denied it for a whole afternoon. Well, in fairness to him, my father giggled to himself. I couldn't figure out why he was giggling. Surely he was going to skin me alive later and wear me around town of a cold evening. He said he couldn't help laughing because the lie was so ludicrous, but I stuck by it so resolutely that it was one of the funniest situations he'd ever been in. He knew he should punish me, but it was also so marvelous he couldn't bring himself to be angry. I'm nearly 36. Every time he gets a new car now he says, "You're not mad at me for something, are you?" before he shows it to me. I guess I earned that. I don't know about heat of the moment, but when a cop asked why I thought I could go that fast down that road, I, without thinking, responded, "Because I always do," then realized what my mouth had just said without consulting my brain, and proceeded to lay my head against my steer wheel forcefully in shame. I was probably 10 to 12 hanging out with the neighborhood kids, one being a few years younger. He was being annoying as hell and wouldn't stop, so after a few minutes of constant annoyance I threw my scooter at him, hitting his head. No serious injuries, but he needed a few stitches. I knew I messed up the instant the scooter left my hands. I didn't do it, but it happened near me. I was working construction one summer, and the veteran guy working with me got into a fight with the foreman and came back to the floor we were working on all pissed off, kicking things around. We were up on the 4th floor, and windows hadn't gone in yet. He picks up a huge level and flings it out the window, and about 5 seconds later says, "F, that was mine." My parents were tailors and they used to do a lot of work from home. They had really big, heavy metal scissors they used to use. I was very young, under 10 for sure. My older brother did something to piss me off. I grabbed the scissor near me and threw it at him. It missed his eyes by a small fraction. He went ballistic on why would I do something like this. 25 plus years later the memory still makes me sad how close I was to seriously injuring or killing my brother. Smoked an illegal substance. This was late 1990s. I was around 29. I was a pretty heavy user and seller, so I went to this lady's house who would usually be intimate if I brought over substances and got her high. When I got there she didn't want anyone in and there were 2 other guys there on the porch she wasn't letting in either. We talked for a secretary and said they had crack, but no lighter and no money top by one. I had a lighter. I gave them the lighter and smoked with them. First time smoking and the last. Within 1 hour we ran out. They knew some gangsters they could trade their gold chains for more stuff. There was no pondering, no thought process. Driving to the bad side of the entire county at 3 AM to trade gold chains for the stuff seemed like the best idea ever. I had a moment of clarity and oped out of there pretty fast. I used to be not so great of a guy. Clean since May 22nd, 2000. Girlfriend cheated on me in high school. Girlfriend's temporary boyfriend had a friend who keyed my car. She told me who did it, and I decided the best way to handle it was to take a plunger stick and go into his job at the mall and beat him in the face with it until the stick broke. Not my proudest moment. My oldest son was still a baby, and I was a fresh teenage dad. It was the middle of the night, and he was screaming. I was sleep deprived, and I was getting screamed at in my ear, and he was sick and cranky and nothing would help. I went to move him, and his baby fist hit me in the eye or something, but either way, I swatted it away really fast and hard, and he cried even louder. I kept rocking him and crying and holding him, even after he fell asleep. I felt so bad. Almost 9 years later, and I still feel awful about it. After negotiating back and forth at a car dealership for a vehicle I really wanted, the car salesman said, "That's our final offer. Take it or leave it." His take it or leave it ultimatum and his condescending attitude made me get up and leave. This is gonna be a sad one. So my best friend at the time wasn't doing very well, had to move back in with his parents, and had no job. I, being the general manager of a fast food restaurant, got him a job at my store. This dude was terrible, messed up on every order, wouldn't listen, and would complain about everything. Finally one day he came into work drunk. It was pretty obvious, so I had to fire him. After I did, he was just staring at me with this weird up look and wobbling. I stupidly let my emotions get to me and said, "You look disgusting," right to his face. I remember he looked down at his shirt for a stain or something. Then I vividly remember his face as he realized I wasn't talking about his clothes, but himself as a person. He looked so destroyed by that. Without saying another word, he turned around and walked out of the building. 30 minutes later he shot himself in the head at his house. Will never forget the sound of his mom when I called her literally minutes after he died. Will forever haunt my dreams. People say don't blame yourself and all that it's kinda hard when you were the last person he spoke to. I know if I didn't say that, he probably would have done it eventually anyways, because we all knew he was struggling. But since I knew, I definitely shouldn't have said that. I'll at least always believe I heavily influenced his decision. For context and without going into too much detail, he did have a lot of other things going on, like relatively minor trouble with the law, drug problems, friends cutting him out, and such, so I see other things that contributed to it. Still stings though. Miss him a lot. It was quite a few years back, but I have a tattoo about him and have a bit of his ashes in a keychain I carry around everywhere. So although I don't particularly believe in an afterlife, I do have a way he's still somewhat with me. Anyways, thanks for the support everyone. Peak pandemic. After coming off a furlough, resigning from my dream company, thinking was going to be laid off, and taking a new job across the country, and moving my family. Could have stayed and would have avoided a layoff. Kids would have kept their friends. Wife and I would have kept our community. Did all of this thinking I was doing the right thing. Have had such regrets. I kept calling to see about when we could come back after the state shut down everything during the 2020 part of the pandemic. They kept telling me, my team, and my colleagues that we couldn't come back yet, and they were working on it from their end. It took 4 months before we get the call to come back. When I arrived, I see new people. They never needed to shut down and had an exemption the whole time. So they sent all of us home and hired a new crew for cheaper. When the business began to pick up, they called everyone back and expected us to be cool with them revealing the 9 new guys hired, while all of us had been sitting around worried about our jobs. I left at the end of that shift, resolved to never come back. Went back on unemployment, and I've spent all of the intervening time wondering if that was the right decision. Kept my dignity, I guess, but that doesn't pay the bills, and neither have the 2 jobs I've had since then. Probably yelling at like 60 kids at once. I worked on campus a long time ago, and we were having some retreat over the summer where they dropped like 200 kids off to stay for like 5 days. Lots of problems were being caused by them not respecting anything and just being stupid kids. I was getting super annoyed with them, especially since I worked in the library and they would not shut the hell up. Anyway, fast forward to like day 3. I leave work and see my car covered in branches, leaves and other floral debris. I was pissed. I was seeing red and just looked at the kids across the street in the commons yard and just unleashed unholy hell upon them. Yelled so loud I was echoing across campus, the vein in my forehead pounding so hard my ears burned. The kids were scared. I was pissed, and my boss was so concerned. He asked if I needed to take tomorrow off to cool down. I told him I was fine, but these kids were on my last nerve. Anyway, like 5 years later, I was telling one of my best friends this story, and he dropped a bombshell on me. It wasn't the kids, it was him and a fellow friend of ours. They wanted to prank me, since they knew the kids were driving me crazy. I probably stared at him for like 2 solid minutes before saying I told those kids if I caught them anywhere near my car, it would be the last thing they'd do. Then I started laughing. Mayo got me.